giant woodpeckers that look like owls and make sparks when they peck on wood. Now that's something I want to see, man. Hello and welcome to the Chain Smoking Writers channel. And in case you didn't know, that's me, Happy Ngo, the Chain Smoking Writer. And today we're going to talk about the man who gave the Chinese people fire. Now, although fire was a well-known phenomenon to the early humans, but they had no way of controlling it, or they had no idea of how to use it. In fact, most of the early people were so afraid of naturally occurring fires like forest fires or fires caused by lightning strikes on the land. They would actively try to escape from it because, let's face it, it's dangerous. You could die, Even today, I mean, when we see forest fires, when we see buildings burning down, our natural instinct is to escape and run away from it because there's no way to contain it or control it. And that is basically every single fire our early ancestors saw or came into contact with. Now, these early hunter-gatherers, they subsisted on a diet consisting mainly of raw vegetation, fruits, berries, and prey, raw meats from the prey that they hunted. And usually they will consume everything from fur to marrow, if that's even possible, And it was most probably by chance that some of them actually found the burnt remains of their usual prey after some forest fire or something, and they ate some of this burnt meat, and they found it to be delicious. And this news started to spread among the people, and a lot of them started to look forward to the next forest fire or some other forms of naturally occurring fire, so they could scavenge more of these cooked meats, in the wild. So they still have no idea how to start their own fire and how to cook their own meats. They only know that, oh, this thing that we found is delicious, and if we find more of it, woohoo, yeah. And they also realized that this controlled fire would be a very good source of warmth and illumination in the night. And this fire, if it's well controlled and contained, could provide very good protection from the unknowns in the dark against predators and bugs that would naturally stay away from fires. But finding tinder was a very rare occurrence, and to keep the embers or the tinder alive was an even harder thing to do for these early peoples. So having a fire in their settlement is a rare luxury for these peoples. So the lifestyle didn't really change. They still continued living in roughly a similar manner, consuming raw foods and enduring the cold and the dark. Now at this point, the myth starts. So apparently at this point in time, the Jade Emperor, or the king of the heavenly realms, the big king god thing in the sky, saw the plight of humans, and he took sympathy on them. So he appeared in the dreams of one of these men of the tribe. He told this young man that far to the west there was this magical kingdom called Suiren, and in this kingdom of Suiren he could find tinder and he could bring fire back to the people. And thus the Jade Emperor charged this young man with the mission of bringing fire to the people. So upon waking up from this dream, this young man enthusiastically set off on his mission. He journeyed west for countless days, through mountains and rivers, over the plains and through over streams. He just traveled and he kept on going, and it was for a long period of time of uncountable days. And he finally reached the magical kingdom of Suiren. Now Suiren is a kingdom that is untouched by both sun and moon. It was eternally shrouded in darkness. And in the middle of this kingdom, there grew a giant tree known as a Suiren tree. It's so huge that the canopy spread over 100,000 acres. And on the Suiren tree, there live these giant woodpeckers, and they look like owls, but giant owl-looking woodpeckers. Go figure. And every time they peck on the trunk of the Suiren tree, sparks flew out. Like if you take a chainsaw to metal or something like that, sparks just flew out every time these birds peck at the Suiren tree. And these sparks are the only form of light that the inhabitants of Suiren ever see. So this young man excitedly went around the whole area looking for tinder to bring back to his people. Tinder that the Jade Emperor of the Heavens promised him. But he could not find any. No tinder, no ember, no fire starters or anything of that sort. And he was so distressed by this. He was so miserable that he could not accomplish his mission. He could not bring fire to the people. And he sat under the Suiren tree to ponder, to think about what he should do next. And as he looked up to the woodpeckers, pecking at the tree and sparks flying out and all, the whole pyrotechnic show going on up there, as he looked up to these woodpeckers, an idea came to him. And he broke off a couple of branches from the Suiren tree, a bigger branch and a smaller branch, more like a thick piece of twig. And he started rubbing these two branches together. It didn't work. And he started to put the point on the smaller branch onto the bigger branch. And he started drilling into the big branch. And with this drilling, he managed to create sparks. Sparks started to fly out. But it would not catch on anything. He could not start a real fire. He managed to create sparks, but he was unable to start a real fire at this point. But the young man refused to give up. He realized that he would need some kind of kindling for the sparks to catch. And so he went around the entire area looking for different kinds of vegetation, different kinds of material, and gather them around the branches that he was drilling to find the perfect kindling, to find some way to let the sparks catch and start a fire. So after countless trials and errors, he finally managed to get the sparks to catch onto the kindling, and he started the first fire entirely man-made. The first man-made fire was started right there under the Suiren tree by this young man. This, mind you, was a monumental moment because it signifies the first time that man has mastery over nature. And he rushed back to his people to tell them about his discovery and to teach them the method of starting fires. Man finally has control over fire. They could do things with fire, they could cook food, and they could have protection from the dark, from the night. This young man further refined the technique of fire starting. He used stone tools to flatten out the bigger logs that he used as the platform, and he shaped these drilling tips into sharp points so he can get a better and more consistent contact point for friction to happen and to create these tinders. And he found better tinders by using dried and rotted vegetation that are finer with finer fibers, and continued to refine and upgrade the methods, and he continued to teach people how to start fires. From then on, humanity moved on from having their activities limited to the daylight hours to being able to perform tasks in the night. And they also progressed from consuming a predominantly raw diet to having easy access to cooked meats and proteins. And this actually played a big part in the evolution of humans itself. And the people were naturally grateful and in awe of this young man who gave them fire. And they named him Suiren, which roughly translates to fire giver or fire starter. And Suiren went on to make many more contributions to humanity and society at large. In an age where there was no written word and everything was transmitted basically through an oral tradition, Suiren came up with the idea of marking important events and remembering important information by tying knots in ropes. And he also classified the natural creatures in the world. You know, he classified the creatures they see into animals, birds, reptiles, insects, fishes. So the first classification and delineation of all living creatures started with him. Well, at least for the Chinese people. So Suiren later would also build a raised platform in the middle of his settlement, tribal settlement, where he would share his discoveries, his ideas, and his observations with the people. And people would gather around the platform to listen to Suiren's lectures on various topics. The topics could be as diverse as how to cook, to how to use fires as a kind of weapon or as a tool in their hunting expeditions. So in a way, you could also say that Suiren was the first lecturer in history. And now, for bonus facts and trivial. Well, for today's bonus facts section, I think I would touch on how fire in itself has greatly impacted and changed the course of human history. Well, firstly, the discovery of fire allowed humans to migrate, to migrate over distances. Because, number one, fire provided protection, provided warmth, and it provided a way of extending the shelf life of the foods that humans need to survive. So, having fire as a tool allowed humans to travel over longer distances and thus migrating out further from our source in Africa. So that's one. Number two, it actually changed human biology in a way. It allowed the brain to grow bigger because of cooked proteins that are more easily digestible by the human digestive system. So our brains grew and we became smarter because we could eat cooked food. Fire allowed for that. Well, apart from the good stuff that fire gave us, here's a downer. There is an hypothesis that fire, the discovery of fire actually gave rise to the spread of tuberculosis in humans. In a way, because humans gather around their bonfires at night in the early days, and they breathe in a lot of the soot and the smoke. So all this soot and smoke ending up in their lungs kind of weakened the lungs and gave the mycobacterium that causes tuberculosis to actually latch onto a host easier and cause the host human to fall sick with the disease of tuberculosis. Bet you didn't know that. And number four, fire was later used as an agricultural tool. The slash and burn technique, where farmers would burn down entire plots of agricultural land in a controlled manner. And what this does is that the burnt field is actually more fertile, and it can say it's much faster to burn down entire field than to manually dig up all the tree stumps and root system and stuff like that. So fire fallow cultivation or slash and burn technique came because human has mastery over fire. But with that also came a ton of pollution. I live in Singapore, so every year we have what we call the haze season, where because of forest fires and these slash and burn techniques that's going on in the surrounding countries, we get a thick smog that covers the entire sky for like a couple of months every year, and the PSI index just go through the roof, Now this next one is an interesting one. Did you know that fire actually helped eradicate a great portion of the bubonic plague. Yeah, check this out, man. The plague arrived in London in 1665, and within one summer took out 15% of its inhabitants. And in 1666, an event happened that some of you might know of. It's called the Great Fires of London. The fire burned through 436 acres of real estate within days. I mean, whoa, that's a huge fire if you know how big that is. And but there's an interesting side effect to this devastation. The Great Fire actually killed off or burned off or cooked off the majority of the disease-causing rats and ticks and fleas. So within the same year, in 1666, the bubonic plague actually faded out or disappeared from London itself. Well, now that's something, isn't it? Now this last point is also pretty interesting. As we've mentioned, humanity has known about cooking food since the discovery of fire, but it wasn't until 19th century, mid to late 19th century, where French chemist Louis Pasteur, you know where this is going now, don't you? Well, Mr. Pasteur discovered that you could kill harmful bacteria in wine if you raise it up to a certain temperature and you held it there for a period of time. And this process was later repeated in beers and in vinegars, and finally it was done to milk to kill off bacteria. This process is known as pasteurization. And incidentally, good old milk was quite a major carrier of the tuberculosis bacteria. So pasteurization actually helped in a way to reduce the number of tuberculosis cases in humanity over time. So yeah. Well, I hope you found the video interesting, and if you did, remember to hit the like button. And if you like to see more videos and stories like this, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified every time a new video drops. And if you'd like to connect with me on the various social media platforms, all the links are below in the description section. And I guess I'll see you soon in the next video then. See ya!